I was 28 years old, working double shifts as a hospital nurse while caring for my dying grandmother in her final months, when her live-in caretaker accused me of stealing the family jewelry worth over $200,000. Within 48 hours, my entire family had turned against me. My mother refused to speak to me. My uncle threatened legal action, and I found myself completely alone, mourning my grandmother while being treated like a criminal by the only people I had left in the world. I had no idea that the woman they believed so completely was running an elaborate theft ring across 3 states, or that my desperate solitary investigation would eventually send her to federal prison and expose a network of elder abuse that had destroyed dozens of families. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I always love seeing our global community come together. If you enjoy stories about justice, family betrayal, and the strength it takes to stand alone when everyone you love turns against you, make sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel so you never miss these inspiring true stories. Now, let me take you back to that devastating October evening 3 years ago when I was just a heartbroken granddaughter trying to understand how the people who were supposed to know me best could believe I was capable of such cruelty. The call came at 7:30 on a Tuesday night, just as I was finishing my shift in the cardiac unit. My hands were still damp from washing up, my scrubs wrinkled from 12 hours of moving between patient rooms, checking vitals, administering medications, holding the hands of frightened people who needed someone to tell them everything would be okay. I was exhausted in that bone-deep way that comes from caring for others all day, the kind of tired that makes your shoulders ache and your feet throb and your mind feel like it's wrapped in cotton. I had been planning to drive straight to grandmother's house, the way I had every single evening for the past 4 months, to sit with her during her final weeks, to read to her from her favorite books, to make sure she wasn't alone or afraid. But when I saw my mother's name on my phone screen, something cold settled in my stomach even before I answered. Emma. My mother's voice was sharp, clipped. Nothing like the warm tone she usually used with me. We need to talk. Now, come to your grandmother's house immediately. I felt my heart start to race, that instinctive fear that something terrible had happened. Is grandmother okay? Did something happen? I was just about to head over there. Just get here. The line went dead. I drove through the darkening streets of Portland with my hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly, my mind spinning through possibilities. Had grandmother taken a turn for the worse? Had she passed away while I was at work? The pancreatic cancer had been ravaging her body for 6 months, and we all knew we were counting days now. Not weeks or months, but the hospice nurse had said this morning that she was stable, comfortable, that we probably had at least another week or 2. I had been so careful to spend every possible moment with her, rearranging my schedule, taking on extra night shifts so I could have my evenings free, sitting by her bed reading poetry and talking about her life, making sure she knew how loved she was. Grandmother had raised me, really. After my father died when I was 8, and my mother spiraled into depression and prescription drug dependency, it was grandmother who took me in, who made sure I had clean clothes and hot meals and help with my homework. She was the one who came to my school plays and soccer games, who taught me to bake bread and tend a garden, who told me stories about her own childhood during the Depression and her years as a young nurse during the Korean War. She was the one who encouraged me to go to nursing school, who told me that caring for others was the most honorable work a person could do, who helped me pay for my education when my mother couldn't or wouldn't. Everything good in my life, every bit of strength or compassion or determination I possessed, came from her. When she was diagnosed last spring, there was never any question about who would be there for her. My mother lived 2 hours away and visited maybe once a week. My Uncle Richard, grandmother's only son, was busy with his law practice and his country club memberships and his expensive lifestyle. My Aunt Susan called occasionally, but rarely made the drive from Seattle. but I was there every single day, sometimes twice a day, before and after my shifts at the hospital. I had even helped interview and hire Patricia, the live-in caretaker, 3 months ago when it became clear that grandmother needed round-the-clock care. Patricia had seemed perfect. She was 52, with excellent references, nursing credentials, and a warm, grandmotherly demeanor that put everyone at ease. She had worked in elder care for 20 years, she said, and she genuinely loved her patients. She moved into grandmother's guest room, took over the daily care tasks, managed medications, coordinated with hospice, and seemed to develop a real affection for grandmother. I had been so grateful to have her there, someone competent and kind who could be present during the hours when I had to work. Grandmother seemed to like her too, though in recent weeks she had been too weak and confused to say much about anything. I pulled into grandmother's driveway and saw that the house was blazing with lights, every window illuminated. There were 3 cars parked in front, my mother's silver sedan, my uncle's BMW, and a police cruiser. My stomach dropped. A police car. Something was very, very wrong. I walked to the front door on shaking legs and let myself in with my key. The living room was full of people. My mother stood by the fireplace, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold fury. My Uncle Richard paced near the window, his expensive suit jacket discarded on a chair, his face red and angry. My Aunt Susan sat on the couch, crying into a tissue. Patricia, the caretaker, sat in grandmother's favorite armchair looking pale and shaken, with a female police officer standing beside her taking notes. And there, in the center of the coffee table, was grandmother's antique jewelry box, the rosewood one that had belonged to her own grandmother. Sitting open and completely empty. There she is. My uncle's voice cut through the room like a blade. There's the thief. I stared at him, completely confused. What? What are you talking about? My mother's voice was ice. Don't play innocent, Emma. Patricia found you going through your grandmother's jewelry this afternoon. She saw you take everything and put it in your bag. She reported it immediately, and when the police searched your car, they found your grandmother's jewelry hidden under the passenger seat. The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. That's impossible. I wasn't here this afternoon. I was at work all day. I have witnesses, time cards, security footage. I haven't been here since last night. Patricia spoke up, her voice trembling and tearful. I'm so sorry, Emma. I know this is hard to hear, but I saw you. It was around 2 o'clock. You came in through the back door, went straight to your grandmother's room, and took the jewelry box. I confronted you, and you ran out. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to report it. Your grandmother trusted you so much. That's a lie. My voice came out too loud, too desperate. I was at work at 2 o'clock. I was in the middle of a shift. I didn't leave the hospital until 7. Call them. Check the records. The police officer looked up from her notes. Ma'am, we did check with the hospital. According to their records, you clocked out at 1:15 this afternoon for a 2-hour lunch break and didn't clock back in until 3:30. That gave you plenty of time to drive here, take the jewelry, and return to work. I felt like I couldn't breathe. No, that's wrong. I didn't take a lunch break today. I worked straight through because we were short-staffed. Someone must have made a mistake with the time cards, or someone else clocked me out. This doesn't make any sense. My uncle stepped forward, his face twisted with disgust. Of course it makes sense. You've been here every day, alone with Mother, with complete access to everything. You probably saw an opportunity and took it. Do you have any idea what that jewelry is worth? Those pieces have been in our family for 4 generations. The diamond brooch alone is worth $60,000. The pearl necklace, the sapphire earrings, the emerald ring, all of it, gone. Stolen by someone we trusted. I didn't steal anything. I was crying now. tears of frustration and disbelief streaming down my face. I would never hurt grandmother. I love her. She's the most important person in my life. Why would I steal from her? My mother's laugh was bitter and cruel. Oh, don't pretend we don't all know why. You're drowning in student loans. You live in that tiny apartment and work yourself to death for a nurse's salary that barely covers your bills. You've been taking care of Mother for months without any compensation, watching the rest of us inherit her estate while you get nothing. You saw an opportunity to take what you thought you deserved. That's not true. My voice broke. I never cared about the money or the inheritance. I just wanted to be with her. I just wanted to make sure she wasn't alone. The police officer cleared her throat. Miss Hartwell, we found the jewelry in your vehicle. The entire collection was hidden in a canvas bag under your passenger seat. We also found evidence that you researched local pawn shops and jewelry buyers on your phone last week. We have screenshots of your search history. I shook my head violently. I never researched pawn shops. I never put anything in my car. Someone is setting me up. Can't you see that? Patricia is lying. She must have planted the jewelry in my car. She has access to my keys. I leave them on the hook by the back door when I'm here visiting. She could have easily taken my car key, planted the evidence, and then called you. Patricia's face crumpled, and she started crying harder. Why would I do that? I have no reason to frame you. I'm just a caretaker trying to do my job. I reported what I saw because it was the right thing to do. I'm so sorry this is happening, but I can't lie to protect you. My Aunt Susan spoke up for the first time, her voice thick with tears. Emma, if you needed money, why didn't you just ask? We could have helped you. We could have given you a loan or something. But to steal from your own grandmother while she's dying, how could you be so cruel? I didn't do this. I was shouting now, desperate for someone to believe me. Please, you have to listen to me. I would never hurt grandmother. Someone is framing me. Please, just check the hospital security footage. Talk to my coworkers. They'll tell you I was there all afternoon. The police officer closed her notebook. We'll investigate further, but right now, the evidence is pretty clear. We found the stolen property in your possession. We have a witness who saw you take it. And we have time card records that show you had opportunity. We're going to need you to come down to the station for formal questioning. My uncle stepped forward again, his voice hard. Officer, I want to press charges, full prosecution, and I want a restraining order to keep her away from my mother. She's not allowed anywhere near this house or near Mother ever again. Richard, please. I turned to him, begging. Please don't do this. Just give me a chance to prove my innocence. Something is wrong here. Can't you see that someone is lying? He looked at me with such contempt that it felt like a physical blow. The only liar here is you. You've betrayed this entire family. You've broken your grandmother's heart in her final days. I never want to see you again. My mother nodded in agreement. I can't believe I raised someone capable of this. You're no daughter of mine. Don't call me. Don't come to the funeral when the time comes. You're dead to me. I looked around the room at the faces of my family, searching for any hint of doubt, any willingness to believe me. But all I saw was anger, disgust, and certainty. They had all decided I was guilty. Every single one of them believed Patricia over me. The police officer touched my arm gently. Miss Hartwell, we need to go now. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As she read me my Miranda rights and led me toward the door, I caught a glimpse of Patricia's face. For just a fraction of a second, when she thought no one was looking, her expression changed. The tears stopped. Her mouth curved into the tiniest smile, and her eyes met mine with a look of cold, calculating triumph. That was the moment I knew with absolute certainty that she had done this. She had stolen the jewelry, planted it in my car, manipulated the time cards somehow, and orchestrated this entire nightmare. But I had no proof. I had nothing except my own word against hers, and my own family had already chosen to believe her. I spent that night in a holding cell, shivering on a metal bench, trying to understand how my life had fallen apart so completely in the span of a few hours. They released me the next morning on bail that I couldn't afford, and had to borrow from a coworker who barely knew me but took pity on me anyway. I went home to my tiny studio apartment, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall for hours, trying to figure out what to do next. The hospital put me on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Someone had indeed clocked me out for a lunch break I never took, and they were treating it as potential time card fraud, in addition to the theft charges. My supervisor, who had always liked me, looked at me with disappointment and said she hoped I would get the help I needed. My coworkers avoided me in the hallways. The few friends I had stopped returning my calls. My family's rejection was absolute and devastating. My mother blocked my number. My uncle's lawyer sent me a formal letter informing me that I was banned from grandmother's property and that any attempt to contact her would result in additional legal action. My Aunt Susan sent me a single text message that said, "I'm praying for your soul," and then nothing else. I tried calling, texting, emailing, begging them to just listen to me, to give me a chance to investigate, to consider that maybe Patricia wasn't who she claimed to be. But every message went unanswered. The worst part was knowing that grandmother was dying and I couldn't be with her. I couldn't hold her hand or read to her or tell her I loved her. I couldn't explain what was happening or defend myself. She was slipping away, and I had been cut off from her completely, branded as the granddaughter who had betrayed her in her final days. The thought of her dying while believing I had stolen from her was a pain so sharp I could barely breathe through it. I hired a lawyer with money I didn't have, a public defender type who took my case because I literally couldn't afford anyone else. He was overworked and skeptical, but he at least listened to my side of the story. He filed motions to get the hospital security footage, to interview my coworkers, to examine the time card system for evidence of tampering. But everything moved so slowly, and in the meantime, I was drowning. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. I spent every waking hour trying to figure out how to prove my innocence, how to expose Patricia, how to get my family to believe me. I started researching her background obsessively, looking for anything that might help. I found her nursing license was legitimate, her references checked out, and her employment history seemed clean. But something about it all felt too perfect, too carefully constructed. 3 weeks after my arrest, I got the call I had been dreading. Grandmother had passed away peacefully in her sleep, with Patricia by her side. My family held a funeral that I wasn't allowed to attend. I stood across the street from the cemetery, hidden behind a tree, watching from a distance as they lowered her casket into the ground. I cried until I had no tears left, grieving not just for her death but for the relationship we'd had, for the fact that she died thinking I had betrayed her, for the family I had lost along with her. The will reading happened a week later. I wasn't invited, of course, but my lawyer informed me that grandmother had left her entire estate to be divided among my mother, uncle, and aunt. There was no mention of me. She had apparently changed her will 2 weeks before she died, removing me completely and adding a clause that specifically stated I was to receive nothing due to my betrayal of trust. Patricia had witnessed the document. That detail caught my attention. Patricia had witnessed the will change. Patricia, who had been alone with grandmother during her final confused, morphine-hazed days. Patricia, who could have easily manipulated a dying, disoriented woman into signing anything. I asked my lawyer to challenge the will, to investigate whether grandmother had been competent when she signed it, but he said it would be nearly impossible to prove, and would cost money I absolutely didn't have. I was completely alone. My family had abandoned me. My job was gone. My savings were depleted from legal fees and bail. I was facing criminal charges that could send me to prison. And the woman who had destroyed my life was living comfortably in my grandmother's house, probably already planning her next victim. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't accept that she had won. Something my grandmother had taught me when I was young kept echoing in my mind. The truth always comes out eventually, Emma. It might take time, but justice has a way of finding the light. I had to believe that. I had to believe that if I kept digging, kept investigating, kept refusing to give up, I would find the proof I needed. So I started over. I created a spreadsheet and began documenting everything I could find about Patricia Holbrook. I requested copies of all the police reports, all the evidence, all the witness statements. I studied the timeline of events obsessively, looking for inconsistencies. I reached out to the nursing agency that had referred her to us, asking questions about her previous placements. I searched online for any mention of her name, any reviews, any complaints. And slowly, painfully slowly, I started to find cracks in her story. The first crack came from the hospital. My lawyer finally got access to the security footage, and it showed something interesting. At 1:14, someone had indeed used my ID badge to clock out at the time card station near the employee locker room. But the camera angle didn't show the person's face clearly, just a figure in scrubs with dark hair pulled back, similar to mine. The footage showed this person walking quickly away from the camera, never turning around. At 3:28, the same figure used my badge to clock back in. But there was something off about the body language, the way the person moved. It wasn't me. My lawyer argued that someone had stolen my badge and used it to create a false alibi for the theft. The prosecution countered that I could have given my badge to an accomplice, but it was enough to create reasonable doubt, enough to make my lawyer start believing me, enough to get the charges reduced from felony theft to a misdemeanor pending further investigation. The second crack came from my own detective work. I started calling the families Patricia had worked for previously, tracking them down through online searches and public records. Most of them were happy with her service and had nothing but positive things to say. But then I found Mrs. Eleanor Chen in Sacramento, whose mother had died 2 years ago while under Patricia's care. Mrs. Chen was hesitant to talk at first, but when I explained what had happened to me, her voice changed. "Oh my God," she said quietly. "The same thing happened to us." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" My mother had a collection of antique jade figurines worth about $40,000. They disappeared during her final month, while Patricia was caring for her. Patricia said she had seen our cousin taking them, and my mother had been so confused and upset that we believed her. We accused our cousin, cut him off from the family. It destroyed our relationship with him. But after Mother died, we found out that Patricia had sold the figurines to a dealer in San Francisco. We tried to press charges, but she claimed Mother had given them to her as a gift, and we couldn't prove otherwise. The case was dropped. I could barely speak. "Did you tell anyone else about this? Did you report it to the nursing agency?" We tried, but Patricia had already moved on to another job. The agency said they would investigate, but we never heard anything back. We were so devastated by Mother's death and the family rift that we just wanted to move on and forget about it. I got Mrs. Chen to send me copies of all her documentation, police reports, and the name of the San Francisco dealer who had bought the jade. Then I kept digging. I found 3 more families with similar stories: a set of gold coins that disappeared in Phoenix, a collection of silver flatware that vanished in Denver, a diamond bracelet that went missing in Portland 2 years before Patricia came to work for my grandmother. In every case, Patricia had blamed a family member, created suspicion and division, and walked away clean while the families tore themselves apart. She had been doing this for years. She was a professional, targeting elderly patients in their final days, stealing their valuables, and framing their relatives. She moved from state to state, agency to agency, always with glowing references because the families she victimized were too grief-stricken or too ashamed to pursue charges vigorously. She knew exactly how to manipulate the situation, how to appear trustworthy and compassionate while she systematically robbed vulnerable people and destroyed their families. I took everything I had found to my lawyer. He was skeptical at first, but as he reviewed the documentation, his expression changed. "This is a pattern," he said slowly. "This is evidence of a systematic scheme. If we can connect all these cases, we might be able to get the prosecutor to look at this differently." We filed a motion to dismiss the charges against me based on the new evidence. We submitted police reports from the other cases, statements from the families, and documentation of Patricia's movements across multiple states. We argued that I had been framed as part of a long-running criminal enterprise. The prosecutor wasn't convinced immediately. She argued that the other cases were circumstantial and didn't prove my innocence. But she agreed to investigate further, and she assigned a detective to look into Patricia's background more thoroughly. That detective, a woman named Sarah Martinez who specialized in elder abuse cases, became my unlikely ally. She reviewed all my research, interviewed the families I had found, and started building a case against Patricia. She discovered that Patricia had been using multiple social security numbers, that her nursing credentials had been falsified, and that she had outstanding warrants in 2 other states under different names. Detective Martinez got a warrant to search my grandmother's house. They found grandmother's jewelry hidden in Patricia's room, wrapped in a cloth at the back of her closet. They found a laptop with spreadsheets tracking the valuables in grandmother's house, including estimated values and potential buyers. They found business cards for pawn shops and estate jewelry dealers. And they found a notebook with detailed notes about my schedule, my financial situation, and plans for how to frame me for the theft. Patricia was arrested on a Friday afternoon, 6 months after she had destroyed my life. She was charged with elder abuse, theft, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. As the investigation expanded, more victims came forward. The final count was 17 families across 8 states, with total thefts exceeding $1.2 million. She had been running this scheme for over a decade. The charges against me were dropped completely. The prosecutor apologized, though her apology felt hollow after everything I had been through. The hospital offered me my job back with back pay, though I wasn't sure I wanted to return to a place where everyone had been so quick to believe the worst about me. But the vindication, as sweet as it was, didn't erase the damage. My grandmother was still gone. I had missed her final weeks, missed the chance to say goodbye, missed the opportunity to be there for her when she needed me most. That loss would never be repaired. And my family who should have known me, who should have believed in me, who should have at least given me the benefit of the doubt. They had cut me off without hesitation, had believed a stranger over their own daughter, niece, and granddaughter. They had let me face criminal charges alone, had banned me from the funeral, had written me out of the will. They had chosen Patricia's lies over my truth. The news coverage of Patricia's arrest was extensive. It was a sensational story. The trusted caretaker who preyed on dying patients, the elaborate scheme, the families torn apart by her manipulations. My name was mentioned as one of her victims, the granddaughter who had been falsely accused and had single-handedly investigated to expose the truth. Reporters called asking for interviews. The local news wanted to do a feature story about my determination to clear my name. And that's when my family started reaching out. The first call came from my Aunt Susan, 3 days after Patricia's arrest made headlines. I stared at her name on my phone screen for a long moment before answering. Emma. Her voice was tentative, almost fearful. I've been seeing the news, about Patricia, about what really happened. I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. We made a terrible mistake. I didn't respond. I couldn't find words. She continued, her voice breaking. We should have believed you. We should have listened. I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try. Can we talk? Can I see you? You want to talk now? My voice came out flat, emotionless. You want to see me now that you know I was telling the truth? Where were you 6 months ago when I needed you? Where were you when I was facing prison? Where were you when I was completely alone? I know we failed you. But we're family, Emma. We can get through this together. Please, just give us a chance to make amends. I hung up without answering. My mother called next, then my uncle. They left voicemails full of apologies and explanations. They had been deceived, they said. Patricia had been so convincing. The evidence had seemed so clear. They had made a mistake, but it wasn't their fault, really. They had been victims too. Surely I could understand that. Surely I could forgive them. They wanted to reconcile. They wanted to welcome me back into the family. My uncle mentioned that grandmother's will could be challenged now that we knew Patricia had manipulated her. The estate hadn't been fully settled yet. If I came back, if I forgave them, we could work together to make sure I got my fair share of the inheritance. We could be a family again. I listened to their messages with a strange sense of detachment. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. These were the people who had known me my entire life. And they had abandoned me the moment it became convenient to do so. They had believed a stranger's lies without question. They had let me suffer alone while they moved on with their lives. Now they wanted forgiveness. Now they wanted reconciliation. Not because they had suddenly developed faith in my character, but because the evidence had finally proven what I had been telling them all along. They didn't believe in me. They believed in proof. They believed in public vindication. They believed in whatever was convenient for them. I thought about what my grandmother would want me to do. She had always valued family above everything. She had always preached forgiveness and second chances. She had taught me that holding on to anger only hurt yourself, that letting go was the path to peace. But she had also taught me about dignity, about self-respect, about not letting people treat you as disposable. I thought about the 6 months I had spent alone, fighting to clear my name while they went on with their lives. I thought about standing across the street from her funeral, banned from saying goodbye. I thought about the nights I couldn't sleep, the panic attacks, the crushing weight of knowing that the people who were supposed to love me had decided I was worthless. I thought about how they had never once questioned whether they might be wrong, how they had never once reached out to ask for my side of the story, how they had never once considered that I might need their support even if I had been guilty. Unconditional love means loving someone even when they mess up, even when they disappoint you, even when they're at their worst. My family's love had turned out to be extremely conditional. Patricia went to trial 8 months after her arrest. I attended every day of the proceedings, sitting in the courtroom watching as the full scope of her crimes was revealed. 17 families testified about what she had done to them. The prosecutor presented evidence of her elaborate schemes, her false identities, her systematic targeting of vulnerable elderly patients. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked at me one time. There was no remorse in her eyes, no apology. Just cold calculation, as if she was already planning her next move, her next scheme. After the sentencing, Detective Martinez found me in the hallway. "You did this," she said. "Without your investigation, without your refusal to give up, she would still be out there destroying families. You saved a lot of people from becoming her next victims." I nodded, feeling strangely empty. Justice had been served. Patricia would spend years in prison. My name had been cleared. But it didn't bring my grandmother back. It didn't erase the trauma of those 6 months. It didn't repair my relationship with my family. My family kept trying to reconnect. They sent cards, letters, gifts. They showed up at my apartment building, asking to talk. My uncle's lawyer contacted my lawyer about the will, about getting me reinstated as a beneficiary. They wanted to make things right, they said. They wanted to be a family again. I finally agreed to meet with them, 3 months after Patricia's sentencing. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. All 3 of them came, my mother, my uncle, my aunt. They looked older than I remembered, tired and worn. My mother spoke first. "Emma, thank you for agreeing to see us. We've been trying to figure out how to apologize, how to make you understand how sorry we are." I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me but had never really been a mother to me. Grandmother had been my mother in all the ways that mattered. "Sorry for what?" I asked. "Sorry that you were wrong? Or sorry that you didn't believe me?" My uncle leaned forward. "Both. We're sorry for all of it. We made a terrible mistake. Patricia fooled all of us. But we should have given you the benefit of the doubt. We should have investigated more thoroughly before cutting you off." "You should have known me," I said quietly. "You should have known that I would never hurt grandmother. You should have known that I loved her more than anything. But you didn't know me at all. Or you didn't care to remember who I was when it became inconvenient." My aunt was crying. "We do know you, Emma. We were just so shocked, so confused. The evidence seemed so clear. We made a mistake, but it doesn't mean we don't love you." "You don't love me," I said, and my voice was steady and calm. "You love the idea of me when I'm convenient. You love me when I'm useful, when I'm taking care of grandmother, when I'm not causing problems. But the moment I needed you to believe in me and stand by me, you threw me away like garbage." My mother reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. "Emma, please. We're family. Family forgives each other. Family moves past mistakes." "Family doesn't abandon each other," I replied. "Family doesn't believe strangers over their own daughter. Family doesn't ban you from funerals. Family doesn't write you out of wills. Family doesn't ignore you when you're facing prison. You weren't family to me when I needed you. You were strangers who happened to share my blood." My uncle's face hardened. "So what? You're just going to hold a grudge forever? You're going to punish us for one mistake? That's not what your grandmother would have wanted." I felt a flash of anger then, hot and sharp. "Don't you dare tell me what grandmother would have wanted. You weren't there for her final months. I was. I was there every single day until you banned me. I know what she would have wanted. She would have wanted you to believe in me. She would have wanted you to protect me. She would have wanted you to be the family she raised you to be." "We can't change the past," my mother said. "But we can move forward. We can rebuild our relationship. We can be a family again." I shook my head slowly. "No, we can't. Because I don't trust you. I will never trust you again. You showed me who you are when things get difficult. You showed me that your love is conditional, that your loyalty is temporary, that your faith in me is non-existent. I can't build a relationship on that foundation." My aunt looked desperate. "What do you want from us, Emma? What can we do to make this right?" I stood up, gathering my coat. "I don't want anything from you. I don't want your apologies or your explanations or your attempts to rebuild. I don't want the inheritance or the reconciliation or the pretense that we're a family. I just want you to leave me alone." "Emma, please." My mother was crying now. "Don't do this. Don't throw away your family over one mistake." I looked at each of them in turn, these people who had once been my family, who had once been important to me. I felt nothing but a distant sadness for what we could have been, what we should have been. "I'm not throwing away my family," I said quietly. "You already did that. I'm just accepting the reality of what you showed me. Goodbye." I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. In the months that followed, I slowly rebuilt my life. I went back to work at the hospital, though I transferred to a different unit where I could start fresh with people who didn't know my story. I went to therapy to process the trauma of what had happened. I made new friends, people who knew me and believed in me and stood by me. I created a chosen family of people who understood that love means showing up when things are hard, not just when they're easy. I also started volunteering with an elder abuse prevention organization, using my experience to help educate families about the warning signs of caretaker fraud. I spoke at conferences and training sessions, telling my story to help protect others from predators like Patricia. Detective Martinez and I became friends, and we worked together on several cases, helping other families navigate the complicated process of investigating suspicious caretakers. The inheritance situation resolved itself eventually. My uncle's lawyers tried to challenge the will on my behalf, arguing that Patricia had manipulated grandmother into changing it. But I refused to participate in the legal proceedings. I didn't want grandmother's money. I didn't want anything that would tie me to my family or require me to have a relationship with them. The estate was divided among my mother, uncle, and aunt, just as the will specified. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were disappointed by my refusal to fight for my share, that they saw it as me being stubborn and unforgiving. They didn't understand that it wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about the fact that they had valued money and appearances and convenience over their relationship with me. It was about the fact that they had shown me exactly how little I meant to them when it really mattered. My mother tried a few more times to reach out over the years. Birthday cards that I returned unopened. Christmas presents that I donated to charity. Voicemails that I deleted without listening. Eventually, she stopped trying. My aunt and uncle never reached out again after that meeting at the coffee shop. I heard through the grapevine that my mother told people I was cruel and unforgiving, that I had refused to reconcile despite their best efforts, that I was punishing them unfairly for an honest mistake. I heard that they portrayed themselves as victims, people who had been deceived by Patricia and then rejected by their ungrateful daughter and niece. They never seemed to understand that their mistake wasn't believing Patricia initially. Their mistake was abandoning me completely, refusing to even consider my innocence, and only wanting me back once I had been publicly vindicated. 3 years after Patricia's conviction, I met someone who understood. His name was David, and he was a social worker who specialized in family services. He had his own story of family betrayal and reconciliation that hadn't worked out. We connected over our shared understanding that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from toxic relationships, even when those relationships are with family. We built a life together based on mutual respect, trust, and the understanding that love means believing in someone even when it's hard. We got married in a small ceremony with friends and chosen family, people who had proven their loyalty and support. My biological family wasn't invited. I didn't send announcements. I didn't feel the need to include them in this happy moment of my life. On what would have been my grandmother's 85th birthday, David and I visited her grave. I brought flowers and sat on the grass beside her headstone, talking to her the way I used to when she was alive. "I hope you understand why I can't forgive them," I said softly. "I hope you don't think I'm being cruel or stubborn. They didn't just make a mistake, Grandma. They showed me that their love had conditions, that their faith in me was fragile, that I couldn't count on them when I needed them most. You taught me to value myself, to demand respect, to not let people treat me as disposable. I'm just following the lessons you taught me. I like to think she would understand. I like to think that the woman who had raised me to be strong and independent would be proud that I had stood up for myself, that I had refused to accept crumbs of affection from people who had thrown me away. David sat beside me, holding my hand, giving me the space to grieve and remember. This was family, I thought. This was what love looked like. Not the people who shared your DNA but abandoned you when you needed them. Not the people who only loved you when it was convenient. But the people who chose to stand beside you, who believed in you even when the evidence looked bad, who fought for you when you couldn't fight for yourself. I had lost my biological family, but I had gained something more valuable: self-respect, chosen family, and the certainty that I would never again accept conditional love from anyone. Patricia served her 15 years in federal prison. I heard she was released last year, now in her late 60s, her health failing from years of incarceration. I don't know where she went or what she's doing now. I don't care. She took 6 months of my life, destroyed my relationship with my family, and caused me trauma that took years to heal. But she didn't break me. She didn't win. I think about my family sometimes, wondering if they ever truly understood what they did, if they ever grasped the full weight of their betrayal. I wonder if they tell themselves comfortable stories about how I'm the one who refused to forgive, how I'm the one who broke the family apart. I wonder if they've ever taken real responsibility for their actions, or if they still see themselves as victims of Patricia's deception rather than active participants in my abandonment. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I've built a good life without them. I have work that matters, relationships that sustain me, and the peace that comes from knowing I stood up for myself and refused to accept less than I deserved. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not reconciling with my family. They tell me that life is short, that I should forgive and move on, that family is important. They don't understand that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I've forgiven them for my own peace of mind, for my own ability to move forward. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let them back into my life. It doesn't mean I have to pretend that what they did was okay, or that our relationship can be repaired. They had a choice when Patricia accused me. They could have chosen to believe in me, to support me, to stand by me while we figured out the truth. They could have said, "We know our daughter, our niece, our granddaughter, and we know she wouldn't do this." They could have investigated, questioned, demanded proof. They could have been family. Instead, they chose to believe a stranger. They chose to abandon me. They chose to prioritize their own comfort and certainty over my well-being. And when the truth came out, they chose to see reconciliation as something I owed them, rather than something they needed to earn. I don't owe them anything. Not my forgiveness, not my presence, not my willingness to pretend that everything is fine. I owe myself the dignity of refusing to accept relationships that are only valuable when they're convenient for the other person. So when people ask me what happened when my family came begging for forgiveness after Patricia went to prison, I tell them the truth. I said no. I walked away. I built a new life without them. And I've never regretted that decision for a single moment. What an incredible journey Emma took from being a devoted granddaughter facing false accusations to becoming an advocate for elder abuse prevention while building a life filled with genuine love and respect. Her story reminds us that sometimes the strongest act of self-love is walking away from people who have proven they don't deserve access to your life, even when those people are family. Have you ever made a choice between maintaining a toxic relationship and protecting your own well-being? Have you ever had to stand alone because you refused to believe you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that true family is defined by loyalty and love rather than blood, And that self-respect sometimes means saying no to reconciliation. Please show your support by hitting that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss our inspiring stories about real people whose courage and integrity helped them survive betrayal and build better lives. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.